Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Miami Hurricanes commitment sweatshirt comes back on for a second time on a Tuesday night. Four-star defensive lineman Tyson Bacon committing to the Miami Hurricanes. This kid is a fascinating prospect where you look at the recruiting services, kind of a consensus three-star guy. And then you go look at Rivals. Rivals has him as a top 60 national player in the country. What I would stress here is go look at the offer list. This is a kid that was offered by every single program in the SEC. You had heavy hitters in the Big Ten like Michigan going after this kid. The reason I bring this up is, okay, 24/7 Sports, which I think does a solid job ranking these guys. 24/7 Sports might have him as a low three-star. I don't think that's how a lot of these Power Four programs saw Tyson Bacon. And I especially don't think that's how Miami sees Tyson Bacon. And what I mean by that is they had this kid on campus. They pushed really hard to land this commitment this early on in the process. And I'll say this as a pure football player, really fascinating kid and a football player that Miami has historically had a lot of success with. You look at Tyson Bacon and say, kind of between a right 6'3", 260. Is he going to be a bigger edge? Is he going to put on weight and play as a three tech? Those were the same conversations that we had with a guy like Ruben Bain coming out of high school as well. I would argue the same conversations that we had with a guy like Akeem Mesidor as well. You look at these tweener kind of football players, they go to other programs and kind of just get lost in the mix a little bit. You look at when they come to Miami, they always seem to have a lot of success. Whether he's going to play as a three tech, whether he's going to play as an edge, Miami's had a lot of success with these kind of defensive linemen. I want to get into where I think Tyson Bacon ends up playing. We're going to dive into a little bit of the film because I think the film's very intriguing. Before we get into it, as always, the Miami Hurricane fans, appreciate you guys. And this is like my freaking ideal Tuesday night, just sitting in my basement talking about Miami Hurricane commitments. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Tyson Bacon. And we're going to turn on the film in just a second, but I want to stress here is I think he can have success playing out on the edge or as a three tech in the defensive line. I look at Tyson Bacon and say that this kid looks like a grown man. He's a very developed individual, and he looks like a dude that just looks at the Miami Hurricanes weight room, probably going to put on 10 pounds. Like a guy that I think can hold 290 pounds pretty comfortably. Now, is that what Miami decides to do with a guy like Tyson Bacon? That's probably to be determined. We'll see what his body looks like in December when he's enrolling with Miami. I think he can do it both. When you turn on the high school film, you watch him play out on the edge. It's kind of similar to that Ruben Bain just horsepower, like really strong lower half, really strong hands. There's not a lot of tackles that can deal with the horsepower that Tyson Bacon has. He's not super long. He's not super bursty and bendy, but he's a speed to power kind of guy that gives tackles trouble. Now, when you kick him inside, although he might be a little bit of a smaller interior defensive lineman as we sit right now, he gives these interior offensive linemen a lot of problem with the first step in athleticism. And so he's a guy that I think can have success either at the three tech or out on the edge, just depending on how Miami wants to use him. And again, I trust the staff because they've had success with guys like Akeem Mesidor. They've had success with guys like Ruben Bain. Why not Tyson Bacon too? In fact, that's probably what sold Tyson Bacon on Miami. It's like the success that Miami's had with players like Tyson Bacon. Getting into the film, the film is really intriguing because you do see him line up all over the place as like a defensive chess piece on the defensive line. I will say this, although he's only 6'3", does seem to have a decent amount of length for that size. You continue to watch him play, and I think one is just the power. And again, you're going to see guys pull to the play side here. He's a kind of a wrecking ball. Really powerful kid. And again, I think will be a very good edge defender against the run if he does stay out on the edge. Then you see him continue to work through, and you see a little bit of burst. You see a little bit of bend. You see a little bit of flexibility. Obviously plays with a really high motor. That's worth noting. And you're going to see that all over the film. This kid is like a dog on a bone when he's a pass rusher. Now, when you see him work on the inside, like he's a problem with the length and athleticism that he has. And so I see avenues for him to be successful as a three tech. I see avenues for him to be successful out on the edge. You just have to figure out how you want to use him and commit. I think what gets these kids often in trouble is when they kind of hop back and forth for for the first 2 years on campus and they can't really commit to a position. Figure out what you want to do with him. Let him develop his body to that. I mean, again, just really, really strong at the point of attack. I think we're working through like a double team right here. Really strong. Where's 44? It's hard not to see a little bit of Ruben Bain, especially with how thick that lower half is. I think this is exciting. And again, what I'll say is exciting about Tyson Bacon is, and something we've talked about, the defensive line class is not it's not great in 2026. I think that was part of the reason all these SEC programs were going after a guy like Tyson Bacon, because they ain't that many guys we trust. Now you look at Miami and what they're doing on the defensive line. I think Tyson Bacon is a really good start to this defensive line class. And I think you're going to see Miami try to grab some guys like a Tyson Bacon or like a guy like Ashley Charles, guys that you feel pretty good about are trending to Miami. And then we're going to go out and take some swings. Bryce Perry, Wright, Lamar Brown. I think James Johnson's probably trending to Miami as we sit. This is a really big class on the defensive line because there's not that many good football players out there. Miami is in it for a couple of them. The way I look at it is like, not only are you helping your football team by grabbing some of the better defensive linemen in this 2026 cycle, but you're also keeping them away from teams that you're going to have to beat to go win national championships, whether it's Florida, whether it's Georgia, whether it's Texas. There's going to be some big time recruiting battles on this defensive line over the next couple of months, and Miami's off to a really good start. Going head to head with a lot of programs in the SEC and winning out for Tyson Bacon. Line of scrimmage class for Miami in 2026 is very clear. Mario Cristobal, we're going to bring in some dogs on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.